Perfect. Right. Kia ora koutou. Ko erana me kotirana te whakapaparanga mai. Ko Saskatchewan te whenua tupu no kanata aho. Ko Otatahi o e noho I nane. He tumaki tuatoro o I te kora whaiora ki te tonga ko Ian Reeves toku ingoa. Yeah, so as Angela introduced me before, I'm one of the assistant principals. I'm based in Christchurch, and I look at curriculum, and kind of one of my other jobs is also principal's nominee, which is kind of handling a lot of the NZQA and the assessment stuff for the school as well. And as Ange said, we're going to hear from Nikki as well, who does a lot of our pathways and looks at what are some of the alternative pathways that we use and other options for students in terms of next steps and different ways to access assessment and training. And so we'll join in with her at the end. If something gets really confusing, feel free to put a hand up and jump in at any point if you need to. But also, as we said, at the end, I will put the questions. I'll turn the recording off while I do the questions. And so you can open up and go through, and we can hopefully address any of those issues that have come up. So the goal today is to kind of just cover some basics. So some big picture, just what is NCEA? How does it work? What do I need to pass? Literacy and numeracy co-requisites, because that's something that usually is quite important for a lot of students at our school, and actually is becoming important across the board. University entrance, and then again, we're going to touch on some pathways at the end. Okay, so NCEA is the National Certificate of Educational Achievement. All right, so that's basically, it is the way that you get through high school. It marks your different levels. Okay, and so you've got your year 11 is level 1, year 12 is level 2, and year 13 is level 3. Now they're matched up here with some of the older terms. I'm actually not that familiar with those terms because I grew up in Canada, and so I've only ever known, when I started teaching here, the NCEA was already in place, but I think it helps sometimes to match up so some people can recognize where things are at. So NZQA, you'll hear that name that comes out. So that's the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, and they're the group that's kind of responsible for designing the assessments and making sure that things are, and certifying the schools to be like, yep, you can assess these, and making sure that things are done well. Okay, so it's internationally recognized, and we've got those 3 levels. So just again, to give you kind of a picture, kind of the difference is the older style exams were kind of one big exam at the end, and they had all these different kind of topics within it, but you just had this one big examination at the end, whereas NCEA is built around standards. So you have kind of you will have a variety of different assessments that you can do throughout the year, and they might be, some of them still are exams at the end of the year, but some of them are assessments that you complete at school and you hand in and you get marked on by your teachers, and so you kind of gain credits throughout the year. All right, so how does it work? So once you start into, I mean, even in year 9, 10, all the way through high school, mostly, you're picking a different number of subjects. So NCEA is grouped by subjects as well, courses or subjects. Now, it's kind of up to the school what they want to include within a course. Most courses are matched up with subjects. So level 2 maths, level 1 English, level 3 biology, they all tend to go through, but there are some courses you might see at some schools where actually they've combined courses together. You can do them independently, which is again what we often do as well, is just we're pulling standards and we're working on them, trying to suit the needs of the student that we're working with. Okay, so in the subject you kind of have a lot of topics, and so each standard within it, and I'm going to come to explain exactly what I mean by standard shortly. Each standard kind of has a focus, a topic to go with it that sits within the realm. Okay, so the one that they give you there is a mathematics one, is explore data using statistical inquiry process. For example, in biology at level 3, there is a standard that's on human evolution, and then there's also a standard at level 2 that is around genetic variation. All right, so there's just kind of different topics to go through. And so at school, there's a mix. Some of them are internal, and that means they're marked in school, and the students will get their grade throughout the course of the year. So whenever that assessment happens in school, they'll get the grade given back to them. And then the external. So external is where they're marked by NCEA, and those are the exams at the end of the year. So they'll do all the learning at school, but they'll have to sit the exam at the end of the year. So when you get a standard, you get a certain number of credits, okay? And so there's a number that's tagged next to them. And right now, the range typically tends to be anywhere from, most typically from 2 to 5. There's a few that will fit outside that range, but that's in general what you tend to see. And you need to have a certain number of credits to get each of those levels. So if you want to pass, kind of get your NCEA level 1 certificate, you need a certain number of credits. And to get level 2, you need a certain number of credits at level 2 and again at level 3. Okay, so a standard. So each topic that a student studies, right, they're going to do the learning. The assessment is based on the standard. So often they might learn more than that maybe in the class, but the assessment is focused on this specific standard. All right, so each standard will describe what do you need to know, what do you have to do to achieve and meet it, and those are kind of laid out for teachers, and students can look at these as well on the NCEA, and I'll show you where you can kind of look at those after. But kind of tells you what do you need to know, and what's the standard about, and what are the things I need to learn, and I need to be able to demonstrate. So every standard, like I said before, has a credit value. All right, and typically those give you an indication of one, how hard it is and how much time it might take to master that skill. So typically the bigger the number, so 5 or 6 credits, that's a lot of learning. All right, there's a lot of learning sitting behind that, and so you can expect that it's gonna take quite a time to get to the point where a student might be ready to write that assessment. Whereas a 2 credit standard, that might be actually quite short and could be done within a couple weeks. So as you move through, basically you're going to, when they're working with students, when they're working with the teachers at health school, the teachers will talk about the standard and what's in it, and they'll basically explain how are you going to be assessed, what's it going to look like, and what's in there. And so there's different styles of assessment that can come out too. Like we said before, they could be reports that they're writing, they could be presentations, they could be exams. Sometimes there's portfolios that they're putting together. So there's a lot of different ways that you can be assessed. And again, the key idea is that there are a set of criteria, and we're basically saying, can you show that you can do those things? And what it does is it allows to kind of give some specific context around the learning, and to give us a little bit more flexibility in how we assess students. Was why it originally came in. Cool. So if you look, the grades that you can get, again, can depend on, there's actually 2 different types. So a lot of what students will experience when they are at their school of enrollment, a lot of them will be achievement standards. All right. And basically at an achievement standard, you can get 4 different grades. So you can achieve, which means that you've met the standard. Merit, which is you have met the standard and you've shown that you actually have a more in-depth level of understanding. And then excellence means comprehensive, you know it really well, you've done a really good job explaining and demonstrating your knowledge. And then not achieved if you didn't. So you weren't able to meet the standard. You didn't show enough of the knowledge necessary to meet the criteria. The other type is called a unit standard. And unit standards only give you 2 grades, or achieved and not achieved. These tend to be more focused on skill development. And so they have really strict criteria. And it's just, can you do this or not? All right, and which is why they only have those kind of pass-fail type of grade. So they tend to be focused around things, and some of them are workplace based. And Nikki later on will talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities that are around them. They can be in some mainstream classes as well, mixed in with some of the other standards. And we do offer them, like, for example, a lot of students here will sometimes do some work around, if they're starting to think about a job, they might actually look at developing a CV. And that is a unit standard they can use. But what it does is it shows you what are the key things you need to have in it. Can you demonstrate that you can put together a CV, you know what's in it, and you can tailor it to match a job? That could be an example. Okay, so what do you need to pass? All right, so this is, if you have had any students go through NCEA before, this might be a little bit different. So there's just been some changes in the last few years. So the key thing is, at any single level, so level 1, 2, or 3, you need to get 60 credits. Okay. And basically any credit at a higher level, so if I had 55 level 1 credits and I got 5 level 2 credits, that would give me level 1, because level 2 would count backwards, like it would match up. But the key thing is you need 60 credits at every level. So level 1, 2, if I have 60 credits, I get my level 1, level 2, level 3. Now, the important bit here is that blue line underneath. Okay, so this bit here is in order to get any of these, right, to get any standards at all, to get any NCEA levels, you need to have your literacy and your numeracy co-requisite. And I will explain in more detail what that means. And these are what sometimes you might hear people call them CAAs, Common Assessment Activities. And they're basically, right now, the most common way to do this is to write an exam. And they're offered 2 times a year. All right. And basically, you need to the student needs to demonstrate that they have their literacy and their numeracy at a level that has been determined by NCEA. So you have to show that you're there in order to achieve any of the NCEA levels. Okay, but that standard can be met at any point during their high school career. So if they didn't get it right away in level 1 and they wrote it at level 2, then that's fine. Actually, as soon as they pass it, it means they actually get all those other levels before previously. Okay. These are some of the other differences you may see. So in year 11, which some of you may be aware, it's been in the media a lot, but year 11 is where they have changed and brought out some new standards. And so the style of the achievement standards is quite different at year 11 compared to year 12 and 13. So at year 11 right now, every subject area has 4 big standards. And most of them, they tend to be 5 credits each. So that's quite a big chunky standard. It takes a lot of learning. 2 of those are internally assessed, all right? So they're marked by the teachers at school, and 2 of them are externally assessed, which means that they're exams at the end of the year, and in some cases it might be submitting a portfolio to NCEA to get marked by somebody else outside. Whereas at year 12 and 13, there's a larger number of smaller standards, and a lot of these are 3 or 4 credits. And what that ends up looking like is at year 12 and 13, you're more than likely to have a larger number of assessments happening throughout the year at multiple times. So, you know, throughout the one term, you may end up being assessed. If you're in 6 subjects, you could be being assessed 3 or 4 times. Whereas obviously at house school, we tend to not go through that many, but just so you see the difference. Whereas year 11, it might take quite a long time. There's quite a lot of learning that will happen before you get to an assessment. So in year 12 and 13, students will, by halfway through the year, they may have gained quite a number of credits. You know, they might have 20 or 30 credits, whereas at year 11, you could be halfway through the year and still only have 5 or 10 credits, depending on the assessments that you're doing and how long and how they structured them. So it is more common at year 11 for it to take longer to have those credits build up, and quite a number of those credits will sit in exams at the end of the year. Some schools across the whole South Island and the country are only actually offering 3 standards at year 11 instead of 4. So there's actually only 15 credits in each subject, again, which is still enough to get you your 60. But what it may look like is it might take a little bit longer for them to show up. So later in the year, when all of a sudden you start accumulating those credits. Okay, so just going back to those literacy and numeracy co-requisites that I was talking about. So every student in New Zealand must meet these requirements, okay? And what it does is that they're kind of a thing that sits beside the NCEA. So you need 60 credits in order to get each NCEA level, but to pass any of them, you need to have these 10 literacy credits and 10 numeracy credits, okay? And there's some different ways that you can get them, okay? You only need to do this once. So as soon as it's done, you never need to do it again. So as soon as a student has passed and achieved any of these co-requisites, that's it. And it's not something they ever gonna have to do again. Where it says you can keep banking your credits, what it means is that if a student hasn't passed, let's say, the literacy co-requisite, they can still keep achieving level 1 achievement standards or unit standards and level 2 achievement standards or unit standards. So they can still keep having those. And let's say they get up to 60 level 1 credits and they haven't passed the co-requisite yet. As soon as they pass the co-requisite, they'll get their level 1. So there's no reason why they can't keep getting those It's just they won't officially get the level 1 certificate until they pass the literacy and numeracy. And so this is what this looks like for most students. So the most common pathway to get those literacy and numeracy co-requisites is the CAA assessments. All right. And so those are exams. All right. And so there is a numeracy exam. That's just one exam that gives you your full 10 credits of numeracy. And then there's a reading exam and a writing exam. All right. So the first ones that we did were in May, earlier in the year, and the next ones are towards the end of this term. All right, so those are offered 2 times a year. And again, you can write them as many times as you want. So most students in New Zealand, that's the pathway that they're going to get them, is through those common assessment activities, which are exams. And they're digital exams, so they write them on the computer. All right, so the whole thing's done on the computer. You can also access literacy and numeracy through some of the achievement standards. Okay, so in some cases, some students may pass 2 math achievement standards at level 1 that actually count towards numeracy, and they can use that instead of writing the exam. But the only thing to be aware of is if they don't write the CAA exam and they use those credits, so they use those 2 math achievement standards, those 10 credits won't count towards their 60 because they have to sit outside. This is a somewhat confusing bit, but you can't use them for both your 60 credits and your literacy and numeracy. They have to be one or the other. So one of the other things to just be aware of is there is something called an endorsement. So you can be endorsed with your overall NCEA level 1 certificate or level 2 certificate or level 3 can be endorsed, which is basically saying you have achieved most of your credits at merit or higher or excellence or higher. And what it means is if you, within your 60 or more, you might have more than 60 credits, you've got 50 credits at merit or higher, your level 1 will be endorsed with merit or excellence. That is also true at an individual course level. So if you have 14 credits in English that were at achieved merit or excellence, you're endorsed with achieved merit or excellence in that subject. And so even if you are not endorsed overall, but you're a really strong math student or a really strong history student, you might still have some of those courses endorsed at those levels as well. The last one, just in terms of requirements, is university entrance is a little bit different. So in order to get university entrance, the first thing you need to do is you do need to pass level 3. Okay, so you need to have those 60 credits at level 3 to pass, including your literacy and numeracy. But on top of that, you need to have these other circles that we've got here. Okay, so certain subjects are called university entrance approved. All right, and what it means is most subjects that have achievement standards, so that you're studying achievement standards, are university approved. So that could be biology, drama, history, English, math. All of those are university approved subjects. So at each of those ones, you need to have 14 achievement standard credits. So you need to have 14 credits, okay, in at least 3 university approved subjects. So you need to have your level 3 certificate and at least 14 credits in 3 of those approved subjects. And there is also a requirement for literacy for university entrance that is different than the one I was talking about before. You need to have 5 credits in reading and writing, and most students will pick those up through standards that they do. So if they do English at year 12, a lot of students will get it through their English at year 12. So if they've passed 3 achievement standards in year 12 English, then they might have passed these already, but you can also get them from other subjects. So history, classics, biology, all of those have some of the standards within there give you those 5 credits towards reading and writing. And so it's more just thinking about making sure you've got all of those things in order to be able to meet the requirements for university entrance. So we'll come back and you can ask some questions about that. So this is one of the misconceptions that we just want to make sure we're really clear on. So can you get level 3 NCEA and not get university entrance? And the answer is yes, you can. So it is possible to get 60 credits at level 3, and so you get your NCEA level 3 certificate, but you didn't actually meet the requirements for UE. So maybe you didn't have 14 credits in enough approved subjects, or maybe you didn't have the reading or writing prerequisite. Okay, so you can still get your level 3 and not get university entrance. So it is something we will talk to the students about if that's the pathway they're looking at, to making sure that they've got access to that. I probably don't need to give you a lot of detail on these, but it's just things that may come up. But it's when students submit assessments, so they've done a standard and they've done the assessment and they hand it in, there are some things that may come back. So in some cases, if the student was very, very close, there was a very small minor error within it that was preventing them from getting an achieved grade, they can sometimes get what's called a resubmission. And that's where the teacher will say, can you have a look at this again? Is there anything you want to fix, and go through, and they get a little bit of time and they can try and do a little bit of fixing up to submit it again to get that achieved grade, right? But you can only do that for an achieved. So if they get it not achieved, the maximum grade they're going to get it is an achieved, but it does give them a chance to do it. What can also happen in some cases is, and for us where this becomes relevant, is maybe a student working with us at the house school has done a standard at their school and they didn't achieve it. But we can actually do that same standard again at house school, but what we do is it's called a further assessment opportunity. And basically we'll do more teaching, all right? We're gonna do the standard again, but we'll do some more teaching. And when we do the assessment, it will have a different topic or a different context for the assessment. So it's a brand new assessment they're doing, but it is meeting the requirements for the same standard. And so this is a common thing that might happen with students that come with us. If they have not passed something, but they do it again, they can do that as long as they get some more teaching, they get more confident, and then they're going to use a slightly different context for their assessment. Authenticity. So this is kind of an NCEA thing that we just need to make sure students understand, and we want you guys as parents to understand too. So any work that they submit has to be their own, right? So they can't plagiarize, which means they can't, just cut and paste and copy work from anywhere else. Using AI to obviously write is plagiarism, right? So if they have just put it in and said, can you write this for me, and submitted it as their own work, that's plagiarism. There are some assessments where you might be able to use AI. Students may be able to use it to help them research, but there are some guidelines around, actually, I need to be really clear that I use that, and I almost use it reference, and I say, I did this and I went through. So if students are doing that, our teachers will help walk them through what they might, if they're allowed to do that or not. So some assessments, they might be allowed to use it to help them research, but some they will not be allowed to use it at all. And often when you hand in an assessment, an internally marked assessment, there will be a sheet that students fill out where basically they are signing it and confirming, this is my own work, I did not plagiarize this. Okay, and if it gets picked up that it was plagiarized, it just means they will get a not achieved grade. And usually then we will follow up with the student to have a conversation about what happened and why this happened. This is not very common for the health school because of the fact that they're working with the teachers pretty closely, and the teachers are kind of there's a really good relationship between them, and they're monitoring and giving them feedback as they develop and go through that assessment. So it's very uncommon that this happens for us because they're able to ask those questions. The teacher sees the work as they go through, and they're moving it back and forth, so it becomes quite noticeable, I guess, if they're submitting things that are not theirs. Okay, so I guess just kind of three numbers to put in front. So 60, again, reminder, 60 is the number of credits you need it to get each level. So I need 60 credits at level 1, 2, or 3 to get that certificate. 50 credits is what you need for an endorsement, and 14 is an endorsement at each level, but it is also the number of credits needed for university entrance subjects as well. If students are not sure about their results, or what they have or what they've gone through, the best way, you can check at their own school. So each school will have a record, and most of them will have a portal. So that could be through Kmart or Edge, are probably the most common kind of ways that you can log into the school that your student's attending, and they should have a list of all the results they've done. However, they can also go directly to NCEA through their learner portal and check on there and see what have I actually achieved, what have I not achieved, and what's on there. Okay, and it will basically show them everything that they've listed. It's a good thing for students to know how to do, because one, they can check if they think they should have something and it's not showing up on this NCEA, then we can follow it up and see, has it not been submitted by the school? Is there some reason why it hasn't showed up there? So it's a really good thing for students to learn how to do, to check for themselves. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now and then just answer any questions that people have. And then after that, then we'll do some pathway stuff as well.